On the edge of the city centre lies some of Liverpool's most mysterious structures, a network of tunnels for which its users are still debated today. Joseph Williamson employed many men to build these tunnels. Some people believe he was preparing for the end of the world. Others that he used the tunnels to visit his mistresses. It stands as a modern mystery, with people only recently working parts of the puzzle out.
My name's Tom Stapledon. I'm one of the volunteer diggers with the Friends of Williamson's Tunnels, and I'm also a trustee of the organisation. The story of Joseph Williamson is that he came to Liverpool as an 11-year-old boy, a member of a poor family living in Warrington, and he came in search of work, and he was taken on by a tobacco merchant in the city, a man called Richard Tate, and he worked his way up through the company very quickly. Obviously a very bright lad, and he ended up running the company. He also set up in business on his own along the way, and he became a very rich man. Williamson moved up to this area of Edge Hill around 1806, and he started building. The area was all old quarry workings, sandstone quarry workings at the time, and he just carried on quarrying the stone. And he must have decided that he would build houses all along the street rather than just building one house for himself. They also ended up building these arches and tunnels underneath the whole of this area. The arches probably started off as being there to support gardens in front of his houses, and it probably carried on from there. He's got the bug for arch and tunnel building, and it just carried on, and it carried on for the whole of his life until he died in 1840. Williamson, we assume, was thought of as a madman by everybody else in the area. He didn't talk to anybody very much about what he was doing underground. He was a secretive man, and he just did what he did, and there was nobody to tell him he couldn't. And he just dug his tunnels all over the place, and he was keeping men occupied, and they were learning trades, and they were getting paid for it, so everybody was happy.
People do come up with a lot of different ideas as to why. He didn't need to depend on the work that they were doing to make his own money, because he was already very, very rich. But while the people were working here, they were often learning a trade which they could use in another part of the city to gain employment, therefore keep their families together.
He's had men coming at him right, left and centre looking for work. And he's obviously just turned into a bit of a philanthropist. He was a rich man, but he wouldn't give handouts. He chose to give people work and then give them pay, and that was his style. So he got noted for being the sort of man who would take on anybody who came to him looking for work. Sometimes it was useless jobs, sometimes they were doing proper jobs like building the houses. But they also ended up building tunnels underneath the whole of this area. And that's how it all started out. He's dug a very deep quarry in this spot, taken out the stone, presumably to build or to trade his stone for brick that he used a lot of, and then he's vaulted over it a space down below which is the size of a church nave basically, and then he's put 2 layers of cellars above that and then built a 4-storey building on top. He's reclaimed the land after quarrying the stone out and been able to build on top of it immediately. If it had been left to landfill, it would have been years and years before that piece of land could be reused. the people living in the area probably thought of these tunnels as being a bit of a hazard. They wouldn't want their kids getting in there and getting into danger or getting hurt. So it all stopped instantly on the 1st of May 1840 when Joseph Williamson died. Obviously the work was only being done because he was prepared to pay for it, and the moment he was gone it all stopped, and from then on the tunnels just became a nuisance to everybody else in the area, and they just used these underground structures that they knew about as a dumping ground. If anybody had rubbish to get rid of, or buildings were being demolished, rather than pay to have the stuff taken away, the easiest thing to do was just to dump it down below ground.
I think in the 1980s a small group of men got together and they thought that some of the great heritage of our city can often be sort of gotten rid of, and I think that's how this centre came to be kick-started. There was an organisation set up and people met regularly, and a lot of work began around this area to find out the story behind it all.
He built at least one building, possibly 2 or 3 buildings on this site above where we're sitting now, at number 126 Paddington. And we heard, while doing our research, that there were cellars underneath these buildings that went as far below ground as the buildings went above ground. And we thought that was rather interesting. So when the old flats that were on this site were knocked down and the new student accommodation was being built, we were watching. Every day somebody was getting time off work to watch this area in case anything interesting turned up. And one day a big digger working in the bottom of a deep hole, broke through one of the arches above our heads here, and that was the day in 1999 when we first rediscovered these lost tunnels that had been they just disappeared into folk history. We got the first skip on site in November 2012, and we finally emptied it out almost to the day. 4 years. And now, of course, that we've completed this, there was no break at all. We were straight down to Mason Street on the site of Williamson's own house,